Welcome to JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of anywhere else? And that's because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They don't read any of the comments. They think we don't know what we're talking about. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of First Take talking about Doc Rivers and the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo and what the heck is going on there. This is so fascinating, and this is where you do have to give credit to a LeBron James for that matter, because yes, LeBron James has teamed up with a lot of great players over the years and has kind of, bounced around through a few teams at this point, but he's made every place work and work very quickly. And I remember when Giannis first won his championship, it was, the whole thing was, is he about to go on a LeBron James run and rip off 2, 3, 4 wins right now within the next, 5, 6 years or so? Or wait, it wasn't necessarily all in a row, but is he going to rip off some wins? And he hasn't done that. He's not even close to doing that. And now the Bucks are in disarray. They're firing their coaches. They reach and try to get at Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers has kind of proven to not really be that guy and to be really dated in his basketball approach and philosophy. And I just don't know how much players trust him, quite honestly, or respect him. I mean, I think there's a level of respect, of course, but not this true, unconditional, I will do whatever you tell me to do type of level of respect that you have other coaches potentially being able to lead the way. I'm really interested to see what Tim Legler has to say, because he's one of the best minds in the NBA and basketball. So let's take a look and see what he has to say, and we'll go from there.
What are things for Giannis and the Bucks?
Definitely in a bad place right now. I think when I watch the Bucks, what I'm seeing, a couple of things. I think I'm seeing right now a loss of belief. Right? They just don't have that swagger that you would expect a team with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard to have. There's too many breakdowns, and Doc alluded to some of the things that are based on maybe concentration or based on just competitive will. I'm seeing some of that as well. They've had defensive issues all year, and I think we really started to see early on the impact of not having Jrue Holiday as your point of attack defender, and the difference that makes with a guy like Damian Lillard, who mainly is going to do his damage on the other end of the floor. I don't think people put maybe enough stock into that difference going into the season, because everybody had the Bucks in the top 2 in the East. There's not a person out there that didn't have the Milwaukee Bucks in the top 2 with the same roster they have now. So it's not the talent. We look at the roster and we say that is good enough to contend in the Eastern Conference. Now, maybe Boston's the best team in the East and you come up short. But where they have fallen, to allow teams like Cleveland maybe to surpass them in people's minds, to allow the Knicks, when they're fully at full strength, to pass them now in terms of belief of who could make a run in the Eastern Conference, that speaks a lot more than to their roster. Defensively, the competitive will and the multiple effort plays are just not there right now. Look, Doc Rivers, I'm not laying this at his feet at all. He just got there. It's hard, Monica, for a player to come in mid-season to a new locker room and immediately have an impact. It's hard for a player. It's twice as hard for a head coach, because everything's been laid out since September, how we're doing things. And now you come in, and he doesn't have great relationships with all these players. I'm sure he knows some of these guys. He doesn't have deep trust built up yet. He doesn't even have a chance to schematically change much, because you don't practice a lot in the NBA. So this is sort of an on-the-fly thing. For Doc to have an impact, it's going to take a lot more time than this. And right now, he came into a situation that was a little bit demoralizing. It's gotten worse. And sometimes that's going to happen when you make a coaching change midseason. It gets worse before it gets better. And let's see ultimately, Monica, what Doc can do to squeeze the rest of the juice out of this team, because they've got to improve defensively and they've got to improve their swagger and end game execution. That's, to me, is their biggest issues right now.
So I think the one main point that I really want to point out that Tim Legler brought up is the practicing, right? You don't practice as much in the NBA. And so Doc Rivers is, when you hire a coach, a lot of times you're hiring the coach for their culture building, for their ability to teach and develop younger players, their ability to manage superstars, veterans, right? And they're all different levels of skill. They're all different skill sets. And some coaches have them all or a little bit of each, and some are really great at developing young teams, while other coaches are really great at managing superstars and all of this type of stuff. And to me, Doc Rivers has always kind of been a confusing one in that regard. But regardless of who Doc Rivers is as a coach, he's not in a position to build a culture. He's not in a position to build the voice of the Bucks because he's not the Bucks. He's only been coaching for what, 10 games? He's not a Bucks. There's one thing if maybe he had coached the Bucks before, or if he was an old player for the Bucks, like an ex-player, he could come in and be like, "Let me tell you what Milwaukee is all about. Let's bring it back to the good old days, back when I was here," right? Like, he doesn't have that energy. He doesn't have that resume, so to speak. So what is Doc Rivers bringing to the Bucks? This Celtics culture that a lot of people see was under that never really reached its potential, or the Clippers culture and energy that he definitely never succeeded well enough as what most people thought that the Clippers would be able to do, or the Sixers. I mean, he literally did not get the Sixers any further than they ever had, and I watched a lot of those Sixers games with Doc Rivers, and there's so many times that I'm watching Doc and I'm just like, no one respects him. The whole game, he just has his arms in the air and he's just like, kind of like, getting mad and like what? And it's like, it just doesn't seem like the refs care about him. The players don't care about him. And I feel bad, honestly, just on like a human level. But so I just don't know what he brings to the table in that regard. And there were so many times when you're like, all right, call a timeout, and he doesn't call a timeout. And in basketball, you use timeouts to really stop momentum. And it really does. In fact, I think the NBA should like cut the amount of timeouts they have in half because there's too many timeouts. Every time a game starts getting exciting or one team starts rolling, they call a timeout, and it's like, oh my god, come on, the game is getting exciting right now, and then they, it blows the whole momentum. But for whatever reason, he just like wouldn't do it. Right? Like he pulled a lot of the wrong strings. So I would say his game management is not good. His player management is not good. And I'm not so sure he's really good at developing players. Not to mention that's not what you're looking to do with the Milwaukee Bucks right now. You're not looking to develop young talent. You're trying to maximize what you have. So I'm not sure what you're getting out with Doc. And it's also a very difficult situation with Doc because even if he was a better coach than I'm giving credit for right now, as Legler just said, you don't have practices. You're already going into a difficult situation where this team is already like, kind of underperforming and struggling. And so you just you just don't have the ability just to be like, all right, let's go. Right? Like people point to the whole thing with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers firing their coach. I forget the guy's name. And then hiring, oh my God, I also forget his name now. The coach who's at the Clippers. I'm so bad with names. I always black out on people's names. But that worked because he was already within the organization. And he also already had LeBron James's ear and LeBron James's respect, right? And so then everyone else follows suit with that. LeBron James really carried weight. That was like, we follow this. He is the man. He is the leader. He is either the GOAT or one of them, right? Giannis Antetokounmpo doesn't have that. He doesn't have that weight to him. I don't think players just unconditionally bow their head and say, I will do whatever Giannis tells me to do. They don't see that in Giannis. Whether it's a cultural thing, whether it's that they just don't think he's good enough and they think he's just more of like an athletic freak, right? The Greek freak, or what? But LeBron James commands way more respect and fear. So you can make a decision like that where you're firing a coach mid-season and still do good because LeBron James can not only overcome that himself, but then he also has, he has the leadership capabilities and the respect of the team around him to say whatever Bron says we'll do. right? It just really is that unconditional, like whatever he says, let's go. And Giannis doesn't have that. And that's why now you even see Legler saying, the team doesn't have confidence. And now they're relying on a Damian Lillard, who we know is a really great basketball player, but he's older now, so he's not the same exact player he was. Not to mention, he's not a long-term Buck. This isn't his franchise. This isn't his organization. He even said this is Giannis's team. So you can't really look to him to kind of make those moves. So that's where those things really get in trouble, because you're making decisions and you're probably even pointing to like, hey, this worked out for Cleveland before. Or, hey, this worked out before. It wasn't the same situation. And you can't make decisions and say, well, this worked with Michael Jordan. This worked with LeBron James. This worked with Patrick Mahomes. This worked with this. Yeah, those are truly exceptions. And those are truly exceptional players. And as good as Giannis and Damian Lillard are, it's just not the same. And the Milwaukee Bucks isn't that franchise with that level of history. And Doc Rivers isn't that coach. And that's really why you're seeing this kind of get worse. And I know we want to say sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. That's true. That's true. And I could see the Bucks righting the ship, but I don't see them being on the Celtics level. I don't see them being on the Denver Nuggets level. I don't even think I see them on Minnesota Timberwolves level. And if Joel Embiid comes back and is actually full strength, I don't think he's on the Sixers level. I really don't. Nurse is a better coach than Doc Rivers. He's done more with less. And Doc Rivers has done less with more. And so I think this was a mistake by the Bucks. I think they're completely mismanaging this. And if they wanted to go out and get, say, a Damian Lillard, they needed to figure out a way how to keep Drew Holiday there, right? They needed to do it in a way where they were like, we're not good enough and we can't just switch out players. We need to keep the players that got us here and add a big name, right? That's what LeBron James did. That's what Steph Curry did. That's what Michael Jordan did. That's what all these great teams have done in the past. So the Denver Nuggets did, right? Denver Nuggets didn't give up Jamal Murray to get the guy from Orlando. I cannot remember anyone's names, right? Like they added players, they didn't switch out players. Because, if you switch out a player, maybe it's only a +5, when in reality, to be really good, you needed to get to a +8, +10. And by switching out players, you're just getting a little bit extra, not that full 8, 9, 10 that you needed. And so to me, that was the biggest mistake. And he said, I don't know who doesn't believe you. When he said, I don't know who didn't think that the Bucks were going to be one of the better teams, or the one or two team in the East. I don't know. I wasn't automatically saying that this was going to be a match made in heaven, and especially once you fire a coach and have and you even start the season with an unestablished coach, that's a problem. That's also a problem. You can't build these types of teams in these types of situations. You just can't. But those are my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this one. Do you think Doc can turn it around? Do you think Doc is a good coach? Do you think this is more on Giannis and Damian Lillard? Would love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comments below. And please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really, really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.